Well, this week has been a crazy week. I quit my job and I'm living in the most expensive city in the United States with no money coming in. So let's talk about it. The story actually starts back in seventh grade. So in seventh grade, I was sitting at my middle school called Holy Apostles. And I was sitting in class, my teacher was breaking down an example of what an entrepreneur is compared to an employee. And the teacher was saying an entrepreneur is someone who can take a risk. And usually, because they're taking a risk, they're going to be rewarded with more money. But there's a high probability that they can lose all that money or never be successful. And then she's explained an employee. An employee is someone who's not going to make as much money, but they're always going to be getting paid and they'll always have certainty. I remember sitting there in seventh grade with my arms crossed thinking, why would anybody want to be an entrepreneur? Who would ever want to lose it all? Fast forward to a couple of years. When I was in high school, I became fascinated by day in the life of a CEO video and day in the life of a student athlete video. And I watched people like Richard Yu or Jordan Welch or Iman Ghazi. And I thought their lifestyle of entrepreneurship was so interesting. And the way they made corporate America and the matrix the enemy, I started agreeing. I said, why would anybody want to do that? Why would go work for yourself, have all the money and everything in the world? But at the same time, I didn't have a lot of self-belief, and nobody in my family was an entrepreneur. Everybody was very traditional. And so this world was never exposed to me until I had my first ever internship. And then I had my second internship. And both internships, while they were amazing companies, the work I was doing and it didn't sit well right with me. And I started being more vocal to my parents, like entrepreneurship and going after my dreams is something I really, really want to do. And I got some pushback for it. And I'll be honest, a lot of times they told me, nobody does that. You go to WashU. Why would you waste your degree? People will kill to have this degree. You can get in all the good schools. You can get all the best jobs in the entire world. What are you going to do? How are you going to pay yourself? What are you going to do about life insurance? All the pushback in the world. But I said, I don't care. This is what I'm going to do. And I started a personal brand on social media and I said, watch me. But at the same time, deep down, I had no idea what business I could ever make or anything. I just had an idea to start posting content on social media and I loved it. I had a lot of fun. I think the thing that people don't understand about social media is if you get into this for the money, you're screwed. You're screwed because there's so much work you have to do up front with no guaranteed reward. For years you're doing work just for the love of the game before you finally can get compensated for a brand deal or before a platform would pay you. And I just started posting on social media because I was always drawn to lifestyle content and I always wanted to do this. And as I was graduating college, there was no way I was ready to go out and start my own business. 0% chance. It would have been a horrible idea. I'm very glad I went to corporate. And so when I was making a decision of where to go, I decided I needed to be in New York City. That was my number one objective. So however I can get to New York, I can get to New York. And so I took the job at my company. By the way, fantastic company. Really cool young people to work with. But when I got there, even before I got there, I kind of had in my mind, there's no way I'm staying in this job more than a year. There's no way. You're going to figure something out before that. You're going to figure something out. And before work even started, I took a trip down to Miami to film a day in the life and a podcast with Justice Parmar. And that trip changed my life. And what it changed was my perspective and worldview. I was finally able to see this world of what's possible. You go to Miami and you see people driving these fancy sports cars in the streets. You see 21-year-olds with all this money. I'm at this guy's house who has this massive crib and his driveway is a Ferrari and it's a Bentley. And it's like, boom, bro, you can work for this stuff. You can get this. This is possible. You just have to believe it and you have to figure something out. So I go into work and work started, and it was a grind. I mean, people that have jobs, if you're in college listening to this, you probably don't understand, but if you work a job, you know, like, especially if you have kids, you wake up, you work out, you go into work, and then as soon as you come home, you either sit and lays around for the rest of the day, or you work on whatever you're hustling and trying to do to escape. And so I'd get up at 5:30 or 6. I'd work out. I'd walk to work. I'd sit there, and I'd have every single day at work, I'd have audiobooks in my headphones. Or if I was filming a podcast that day, I would have my guest in the headphones, listening to him and taking notes, all while I'm doing my job and trying to succeed. And then I got to the point where they moved our hours an additional hour and a half. And so now I'm getting there at 8 a.m. and we're leaving at 6:30. And my energy just started really to fall. That's the best way to describe it. And I hate saying this stuff because I'm not trying to sound like a victim, but when you're in an environment that does not align with your heart and your mind and where you want to be, it's draining. And so every single day when I get home, it was war to do work on the side. Like it was very, very tough. I had to push through it. There'd be some nights where I'd be sitting in that bed and I'd be up until 2 a.m. and then I'd get up at 6. Or I would get here and I would eat, I'd take a nap at 8, and then I'd wake up at midnight and try to keep doing some more work. So everything was all over the place. And it just got to the point where I really had to do a deep search. And I came to the conclusion that it's more risky at this stage in my life to stay in a job that has no alignment with my future purpose. And I really want to make this point. I'm not opposed to corporate America, and I'm not opposed to working for people at all. What I am opposed to, though, is when you're in a position or that there's no light at the end of the tunnel, meaning the skills you're learning is not the skills you're going to need to have someday to be the version of self you want. The people you're meeting, the network, the industry, none of that stuff aligned with what I was doing. And so once I started to realize that I have enough money saved up from content over the past 2.5 years to, after taxes, probably have a little less than a year of living expenses. Maybe a year, maybe a little bit more. I'm not exactly sure with this whole taxes situation, but I have enough money to live on it. And when I came to that conclusion, I decided it was time to quit. And I made that decision on Monday, December 15th. I was sitting in the office after one of the best weekends of my entire life. Amazing weekend. Friday, Apple had an influencer event. Me and my friend went, met some really cool people. Saturday, ran a half marathon, spent a ton of time on New Year's reflection and where I saw myself in the future. Sunday, Rajan and Renzo, the guys building Royal Oak Retreat, were in town, grabbed dinner with them, film content up until 1 a.m, running off enthusiasm, and then boom, Monday comes around. And I sit in the office. And as I'm sitting in the office, cold calling people off of LinkedIn, I felt a lot of anger and resentment in my heart and knew that this is not what I am meant for. I put so much effort into content and into media and a podcast and building out media verticals. Why don't I just put all my eggs in that basket at 22 when I have money to live on for a year, don't have any kids or a wife. I'm just living for me. Like, now is the time to do it. If I don't do it today, do you think I'm going to do it in a year? Do you think I'm going to do it in 2 years? What happens when I date the girl? And what happens when we move in together? And what happens when I have to provide for her? And then what happens when I have a kid? Am I going to do it that day? Hell no. And the other thing I want to say, the best day to start is today. And the compound effect is a real thing. I started content 2.5 years ago when I had zero clue how to do it. It took me probably 1.5 years to actually start having some sort of clue of how to do it. I still don't exactly know what I'm doing, but the amount I've learned in between then just from pure trial and error is insane. And because of that blessing that I started 2.5 years ago, I do have an opportunity where I have money in the bank to leave. If I didn't start that then, there's zero, I can't do it. I'm living in New York City, the most expensive city in the entire world. My rent is almost $3,000 a month. There's no shot I'd be able to quit. But I started that day very lost, concerned about what other people thought. But I said it's impossible to fail if I never truly give up. So that's the situation of how I quit. There's a couple of questions you guys asked that I would love to answer. So what did my parents say? We'll just say that very traditional in the corporate sense, but it was tough at first, and there's a little hesitation, as I think there would be with any parents, but they came around and they're supportive. And I think a lot of people are wondering, like, what's my plan to make money right now? It's probably pretty important. So my main source of income at the moment, or what I'm trying to keep doing, is brand deals. So when you get good engagement and you get good traction on your videos, brands will reach out to me and say, hey, we want to work with you on a collaboration. We'll pay you this fee for X amount of videos. And they pay well. It's not consistent. You have no idea when they're coming in and out, but they do pay well. And so my main source of income is brand deals. It's just you never know when they're going to come. I'm also planning to build out a media page called Day in Their Life. If you guys have followed me, you've seen some of the stuff I've done with Justice, Net Cohen, New York Nick, the promoter, Sam Maxwell, CEO of The Cold Life, Nick Spina, CEO of Denovia. Some really cool CEOs where I vlog a day in their life. I'm going to try to create a media page like that where we just do that with business owners, entrepreneurs, and people with cool lifestyles in New York City. And the hope is that, number one, we could get brand sponsorships for that. So brands will pay us to, I don't know, wear their clothes or do something. Or eventually, we can work out a deal with some of these businesses where at the end of the video, we can say, hey, come to this gym for a free class, or come to this restaurant for X% off. And then we can take a revenue cut. So those are my two ideas in the short term to make some income. But my long-term vision is media, and it's this podcast, and it's digital information. I love this stuff, and it fires me up so much. And I think one of the best ways you can learn and get better at stuff is to work for someone in the space already, someone that's amazing and is doing really, really cool things. So I'm actively trying to seek out positions where I could work with or for some of the biggest creators in the world and help them build out their media channels. So where does that leave me with New York City? I love this city so much. Like I would live here for a very long time. But that being said, if a position comes up and an opportunity comes up and that means relocating, I'm open to relocate, and we'll kind of see where the future holds. But if you've stuck to the end here, what I will say is if you're in college right now and a lot of people around you are so concerned about getting a job at a BCG and a McKinsey, an investment bank, and a consultant place, and you don't know what that life is like, or you don't really want that, but you think it's so cool because everybody in the right mind is going to do it. And this is going to get you 6 figures, and this is going to give you status. Go for what you enjoy doing. I made that mistake. I recruited for being a consultant. I did finance as a major before finally switching to marketing, just because I wanted to get the status and the paycheck of those companies so bad. But I have many friends that work in investment banking and at very big consultant firms, and they freaking hate it. The moment you graduate, all that status and credibility, it's gone. And now it's time to actually do work. Now it's time to get there every single day, and you're going to stay until 9 p.m. and you're going to work. And sure, you may get 6 figures, but guess what? When you're 22, believe me, the difference between a $70,000 paycheck and a $100,000 paycheck, minus covering living expenses is not that big of a deal. You're not going out and buying all these crazy things. You're probably just saving and investing it or doing the bare minimum and paying. So that's the first thing I want to say. If you have an idea or a love for something or a call or you want to be a master in some field, frickin' follow that. Don't follow the crowd. And lastly, I have no idea what the future is going to hold. Zero frickin' clue. This has been one of the hardest weeks of my entire life. People would think like you quit your job and oh, it's so freeing and you can do whatever. I've never had so much anxiety and uncertainty and guilt. Every single moment I feel like I should be doing something. And when I'm not, or I'm unproductive, or I don't have urgency because there's no accountability and there's nothing holding me to things, I can get really messed up in the head and start getting a little crazy. So this week has been difficult in the best way possible, but I think it's expected. But what I will say is I'm a firm believer when you trust in God and you take a large leap of faith and put courage into the world, you're going to be rewarded for it. And you guys will be able to see in real time if that's true. So if you made it this far, first of all, much love. Second of all, please drop us a subscribe, share with a friend who you guys, I know if you're listening to this right now, you're probably ambitious and entrepreneurial. So share this with a friend. We always talk about this isn't the life for us. And let's make some magic happen. Take care.